Does it sometimes feel like the connection you once shared with your son has become strained, confusing, even painful? Do you pour your energy and care into the relationship, only to feel unseen, unacknowledged, perhaps even actively devalued? You're not alone in this experience. The complex tapestry of the mother-son relationship can sometimes fray in adulthood, leaving mothers feeling bewildered, hurt, and wondering what went wrong. It's a deep ache, questioning why your efforts, your very presence, seem to hold little value in his eyes. But what if the roots of this dynamic run deeper than surface-level disagreements? What if understanding some of the hidden psychological forces at play could offer not necessarily easy answers, but profound clarity? Today, we delve into the often controversial, yet undeniably influential perspective of Sigmund Freud, to explore some potential psychological reasons why some sons struggle to value their mothers. Welcome to Mind Architect Lab, Practical Philosophy and Psychology. It's crucial to state up front, our goal here isn't to assign blame or pathologize anyone. It's about seeking understanding, exploring complex ideas, and perhaps finding a new lens through which to view challenging relationship patterns. Stay with us as we explore foundational concepts like the infamous Oedipus Complex and how its unconscious echoes might still be shaping adult relationships today. Understanding these hidden forces, these deep undercurrents of the psyche, could be the very first step towards navigating these difficult waters with greater awareness and maybe even compassion. Before we dive into the core ideas, let's briefly set the stage. Who was Sigmund Freud, and why turn to his theories when discussing mother-son dynamics? Freud, living from the mid-19th to the early 20th century, was the father of psychoanalysis, a revolutionary approach to understanding the human mind. He proposed that much of our mental life operates beneath the surface of conscious awareness, in what he termed the unconscious. He believed that our earliest childhood experiences, particularly within the family, leave indelible marks on our personality, our behavior, and crucially, our relationships throughout life. Now, Freud's ideas, particularly around psychosexual development, have certainly generated significant debate and criticism over the decades, and modern psychology has evolved considerably since his time. However, his influence on Western thought and the very language we use to talk about the mind, concepts like the ego, defense mechanisms, the significance of dreams, is undeniable. Why focus on Freud regarding the mother-son bond specifically? Because Freud placed immense importance on the figure of the mother. In his view, the mother is typically the child's first love object, the primary source of nourishment, comfort, and security. This initial, intense relationship forms the bedrock upon which future attachments, conflicts, and perceptions are built. Exploring his perspective, therefore, can offer unique insights into the origins of potentially difficult dynamics that emerge later in life. It aligns with our channel's aim of using psychological and philosophical wisdom to foster self-knowledge and navigate modern challenges. But again, a vital disclaimer. Freudian theory is just one lens among many. It doesn't hold all the answers, and it's essential to approach these concepts critically and with nuance. Think of it as exploring one significant layer of a very complex psychological reality. Our aim today is insight and exploration, not definitive diagnosis or judgment. Now, let's venture into one of Freud's most famous and perhaps most misunderstood concepts, the Oedipus Complex. While the original myth involves patricide and incest, Freud used the term symbolically to describe a crucial phase in a young boy's psychosexual development, typically occurring between the ages of 3 and 6. In essence, Freud proposed that a boy develops intense, possessive feelings of love and desire for his mother, seeing his father as a rival for her affection and attention. This isn't necessarily a conscious, literal desire in the adult sense, but rather a powerful, unconscious dynamic rooted in the child's primary attachment and emerging sense of self. The boy fears castration by the powerful father figure, again, often interpreted symbolically as a fear of losing power or autonomy, which eventually leads him to resolve the complex by identifying with the father and repressing his intense desires for the mother. Now, how does this potentially century-old theory relate to an adult son seemingly not valuing his mother? Psychoanalytic thought suggests that if the Oedipus complex isn't adequately resolved, its echoes can reverberate throughout life. An unresolved complex might manifest in several ways relevant to our topic. The man might struggle with emotional separation from his mother, remaining unconsciously entangled in those early dynamics. He might perpetually seek her approval, yet simultaneously resent her perceived power or influence. Conversely, he might react strongly against anything perceived as maternal control, pushing her away or devaluing her as a way to assert his independence, an independence he hasn't fully internalized. He might struggle to form healthy, intimate relationships with partners, either seeking mother figures or rejecting intimacy for fear of engulfment. The key here is the unresolved nature. Instead of integrating the parental figures and moving towards mature object relations, the man remains caught, unconsciously playing out old dramas. Think, for instance, of a hypothetical man in his 30s who relies heavily on his mother for practical support and validation, yet speaks dismissively of her opinions and life choices to his friends or partner. This inconsistency could hint at an underlying ambivalence rooted in these early, unresolved dynamics, a simultaneous need for and rejection of the maternal figure. Let's take a moment for a gentle reflection. Without judgment, can we observe patterns in our own relational dynamics or those we know that might hint at these early, powerful imprints of attachment, rivalry, and the struggle for separation? Sometimes just acknowledging these potential undercurrents is the beginning of understanding. Building on this foundation of early attachment, let's explore another Freudian-inspired concept crucial to understanding the mother-son dynamic: the interplay of idealization, devaluation, and ambivalence. In early infancy, the mother is often perceived from the baby's limited perspective as an all-powerful, perfectly attuned caregiver, the source of all comfort and satisfaction. This is a phase of profound idealization. She is the world, and she is ideally perfect in meeting the infant's needs. However, reality inevitably intrudes. No mother can be perfectly attuned forever. She has her own needs, limitations, and imperfections. The child experiences frustration, disappointment, moments where needs aren't instantly met. This clash between the idealized internal image of the mother and the real, inevitably flawed external mother can be difficult to integrate. According to psychoanalytic thought, this can lead to intense feelings of ambivalence, the simultaneous experience of strong, positive, love, dependency, and negative, anger, frustration, hate, feelings towards the same person, the mother. For some individuals, this ambivalence is hard to tolerate. One way the psyche might defend against this uncomfortable mix of feelings, or against the pain of disillusionment, is through devaluation. By diminishing the mother's importance, criticizing her flaws, or focusing exclusively on her negative aspects, the son unconsciously attempts to manage his disappointment or assert control over his own conflicting emotions. He splits the image of the mother into all good, an unattainable ideal, and all bad, the target of his frustration, struggling to see her as a whole, complex human being. How does this manifest in adulthood? It can contribute to that perplexing push-pull dynamic. A son might seem intensely needy one moment, relying on his mother for emotional support or practical help, and then suddenly become cold, critical, or dismissive the next. He might hold his mother to impossible standards derived from that early idealized image, inevitably finding her lacking, which then fuels his devaluation. This isn't necessarily a conscious strategy. It's often an unconscious pattern born from the difficulty of reconciling the idealized internal mother with the real person. Consider the example of a man who publicly praises his mother's sacrifices but, in private conversations, constantly complains about her meddling or criticizes her lifestyle choices. This stark contrast might reflect that underlying ambivalence and the use of devaluation as a way to cope with complex, perhaps contradictory feelings. Let's pause for another reflection. How do societal pressures and expectations of the perfect mother potentially collide with the reality of mothers as individuals with their own lives and limitations. How might this tension, both internal and external, play out in a son's perception and expressed value of his mother? Recognizing this dynamic can foster empathy for both parties caught in its web. Finally, let's consider the role of unconscious defense mechanisms, another cornerstone of Freudian theory, in potentially shaping a son's behavior towards his mother. Defense mechanisms are unconscious psychological strategies the ego uses to protect itself from anxiety, conflict, or unacceptable thoughts and feelings. They operate automatically, outside our awareness, and while they can be adaptive in the short term, they can distort reality and hinder healthy relationships when used rigidly or excessively. Several defense mechanisms might be relevant when exploring why a son appears not to value his mother. One is projection. This involves attributing one's own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or motives to another person. A son struggling with his own feelings of inadequacy, anger, or dependency might unconsciously project these feelings onto his mother, perceiving her as critical, controlling, or needy, even when objective evidence doesn't fully support this view. By criticizing her, he's indirectly managing his own internal turmoil. Another relevant mechanism is reaction formation. This occurs when a person behaves in a way that is diametrically opposed to their true, often unconscious feelings. A son who harbors deep-seated, unresolved dependency needs towards his mother might act overly independent, dismissive, or even hostile towards her. This exaggerated display of self-sufficiency serves to mask the underlying vulnerability he cannot consciously accept. Displacement is another key mechanism. This involves redirecting emotions, often anger or frustration, from their original source to a safer, less threatening target. A son might be facing stress at work, conflict in his romantic relationship, or general life dissatisfaction. Instead of confronting the true source of his frustration, he might unconsciously displace that anger onto his mother, who may be perceived as a safer target, unlikely to retaliate in a way that jeopardizes other areas of his life. Think about a son who, after a bad day at work, picks a fight with his mother over a trivial matter. The intensity of his reaction is disproportionate to the situation, suggesting that feelings from elsewhere are being displaced onto her. These mechanisms, projection, reaction formation, displacement, among others, operate subtly, weaving themselves into the fabric of interactions. They can create misunderstandings, fuel conflict, and contribute significantly to the mother's feeling of being unfairly criticized or devalued, because the son's behavior isn't truly about her as a person, but about his own internal, unconscious processes. Let's reflect once more. In moments of tension or communication breakdown within family relationships, could we consider the possibility that unconscious defense mechanisms might be influencing the interaction more than the surface issue suggests? This isn't about excusing hurtful behavior, but about understanding its potential deeper roots. So let's bring these threads together. We've explored several interconnected ideas from the Freudian perspective that might shed light on the painful dynamic of a son not valuing his mother. We touched upon the lingering echoes of the unresolved Oedipus Complex, potentially leading to difficulties with separation, authority, and mature relating. We discussed the complex interplay of early idealization, inevitable disillusionment, and the resulting ambivalence or devaluation as a defense against difficult feelings. And we examined how unconscious defense mechanisms like projection, reaction formation, and displacement can distort perceptions and lead a son to treat his mother in ways that don't reflect her true worth or his underlying, perhaps conflicted feelings. What connects all these concepts is the power of the unconscious and the enduring impact of early life experiences, particularly the primary relationship with the mother figure, as posited by Freud. These aren't conscious choices or deliberate acts of malice in most cases. They are often the playing out of deep-seated psychological patterns formed long ago. Remember that open loop we started with, the promise of understanding the hidden forces? Freud's perspective suggests these forces are precisely these unconscious conflicts, unresolved developmental stages, and defensive maneuvers operating beneath the surface of our awareness. Recognizing their potential influence is the crucial first step towards gaining clarity. It doesn't magically fix the relationship, nor does it excuse genuinely hurtful behavior. But understanding can lessen the confusion and personalize the pain. It shifts the focus from "what did I do wrong" to "what complex dynamics might be at play here." It's also important to briefly reiterate, as we move towards concluding, Freud's is just one perspective. Other psychological schools like attachment theory, object relations theory, and contemporary psychodynamic approaches offer complementary or alternative insights into parent-child relationships throughout the lifespan, often building upon or reacting against Freud's initial formulations. Exploring these is valuable too, perhaps a topic for another time. In conclusion, the feeling of being unvalued by one's adult son is a deeply painful experience. While the reasons are always multifaceted, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories offer a compelling, albeit complex and sometimes controversial lens through which to understand potential underlying psychological factors. The unresolved remnants of early developmental stages like the Oedipus Complex, the difficult dance between idealization and devaluation, and the pervasive influence of unconscious defense mechanisms can all contribute to behaviors that manifest as a lack of appreciation or respect. These dynamics are often rooted in the very first, most formative human bond, shaped by unconscious needs, fears, and conflicts that continue to echo into adulthood. Our exploration today wasn't intended to provide simple solutions, but to foster deeper understanding and encourage self-reflection for everyone involved in such challenging dynamics, mothers, sons, and observers alike. Recognizing these potential undercurrents doesn't excuse pain caused, but it can pave the way for greater empathy, perhaps shifted expectations, and potentially, over time, healthier ways of relating, even if that simply means understanding the limits of what can be changed. True growth often begins with the courage to look beneath the surface. What are your thoughts on Freud's perspective on these complex family dynamics? Do these ideas resonate with your own observations or experiences? Please share your reflections respectfully in the comments below. We value thoughtful discussion. If you found this exploration insightful and it provided some food for thought, please take a moment to give this video a like. It genuinely helps our channel reach more people seeking practical philosophy and psychology for modern life. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to Mind Architect Lab and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss our future explorations into the complexities of the human mind and relationships. Finally, if you know someone, a friend, a family member, who might find this discussion helpful or clarifying, please consider sharing this video with them. Thank you for joining us today at Mind Architect Lab. Perhaps next time we can explore how attachment theory offers a different, yet equally insightful lens on these enduring parent-child bonds. Until then, take care and keep exploring the architecture of your mind.